Check that we are recording. We are. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening to hear Brett Bevell talk about his new book, Healing Racism Within. Healing Racism Within, A Lightworker's Guide, is a book for our times. It goes beyond naming the cultural demons that hold together white America's historical racist fabric and boldly offers techniques and exercises for looking deeply within, both psychologically and spiritually, to confront and transform internalized racism and bring about positive change within oneself and then out into the world. Brett Bevell is the author of several books, including Psychic Reiki, The Wizard's Guide to Energy Healing, The Reiki Magic Guide to Self-Attunement, and Reiki for Spiritual Healing. He teaches regularly at the holistic venues in the Hudson Valley and around the country, and offers energy healing through the Solvana app by Mind Valley. As a poet and performance artist, Bevell is also the author of two long narrative poem books, America Needs a Woman President and America Needs a Buddhist President, which initially aired on National Public Radio's All Things Considered. Brett has electrified audiences around the world with his live oral recitations, and we're so happy to have him join us tonight. Welcome, Brett.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you for having me, and just want to express my gratitude to Oblong Books for hosting this event, and also to Paul Cohen and Monkfish for publishing this book, because I know that even though it's a very important time for this work to come out, it's also something that I think society is still resistant to in some ways. And I just want to also thank all of you who are here for taking the time out of your day or evening, depending on what time zone you're in, to be here with me and to have these important conversations and to do this work. So I'm going to just talk a little bit, also do a little bit of reading from the book, and then later in our evening, I'm going to take you through an energy healing experience so you can get a real sense of the kinds of tools that the book talks about. But I'm just going to begin by first just talking a bit about my own life. So I was born into a family that was very challenging, to say the least. I was born into a family where there were murderers and pedophiles and people who were also very, very racist. And in my own healing process, which didn't really start to even begin until after I graduated college, but in my own healing process, I began to see that some of the systems that I saw in place in my family, that those same systems existed in society at large, specifically around issues around race. So what I mean by that is, when I look at the issue of sexual abuse and how in a family dynamic, often, there's the abuser, and then there's also a lot of silent partners who maybe not are committing the direct abuse, but who are very quiet about it, who don't want to talk about it, who want to turn a blind eye to things because they don't want the dynamic of the family to be, shifted or uprooted. And so I've noticed that same thing going on in society as a whole. And so in my own healing process, what I noticed was that those tools that I was using to overcome my own issues around abuse, sexual abuse as a child, that those same kinds of tools could also be adapted for me as an individual, as a white male, to help weed out the negative cultural conditioning, the negative racist energetic imprints that were in me, as one who grew up in this society that does have some really deep shadow work that it needs to do regarding issues of race. So the book is basically a collection of tools that people can use, starting from very simple, what I call, art therapy kinds of techniques, which are simple doodles. You don't have to have a great artistic ability to do them, but where you do these racial self-portraits just to kind of get a sense of, where you might need to give more attention to yourself. So the book explores those. It also explores very simple, kind of more new age techniques, such as affirmations and lofty questions. even expressing what I call multiracial gratitude, and how gratitude can rewire the brain. We often hear certainly in circles that I gravitate towards, as one who works at Omega Institute, we often hear how gratitude can help rewire the brain and change the neuroplasticity of the brain to be more positive. And I've often thought, well, why not use that same process of gratitude to really focus on rewiring our brain around issues of race? So the book explores, doing multiracial gratitude process as a daily practice to rewire your brain, etc. But most of you probably are aware of me as an energy healer, as one who has explored not only Reiki, but other forms of energy healing. So the book also explores those possibilities, the possibilities to use energy healing to really take that negative energy, those negative energetic imprints that exist in the cells of our body, in our mental field, in our emotional body, even in our karmic body, and even in the ancestral lines that exist through time between us and our ancestors, and to really clear them. So I'm going to just read a little bit from the book, and then I'm going to take you through an experience. So let me just pull up. I'm just going to read a little bit from the first chapter, which is titled "The Wound We Cannot See." During my childhood and even into my teenage years, I refused to acknowledge that some members of my family were alcoholics and others were even pedophiles. Nor did I consider Clyde, my father's raging, hateful real estate friend who bragged to many of us times of having killed an innocent black boy years before, and who was someone I hated, whose presence I dreaded, to be a murderer. I never realized that by sending me and my older brother on fishing trips with Clyde, my own father was letting us sit alone on a lake on a boat with a murderer many times. And while I didn't like the grand wizard of the Ku Klux Klan who came to repair our television set because I could see the crack of his ass hanging out while he bent over to work, and I found his constant anti-Semitic commentary to be idiotic, it never occurred to me that my father might be a supporter of that same hateful ideology. Even when my father spoke about wanting to put a statue of Adolf Hitler in the parking lot of his store, I told myself it was just because he was drinking. I never attributed his vile ideas to be based on a real hatred existing inside his heart. In all those instances, I made excuses, not doing the deep work required of honestly confronting people, but instead creating reasons in my mind why these people were somehow simply gone astray temporarily. I had hoped that they would find their senses, but I was lying very deeply to myself, not because I was stupid, because it was what I had to do to survive. In order to not go completely mad as a child trapped in this hellish environment, I had to create excuses to make my own life seem sane. I often think our predominantly white culture does this same thing with regard to its ancestry and history. So again,
Brett, I don't mean
that's just a kind of a...
Brett, I'm sorry to interrupt you at this point. We've had a request from somebody in the audience. Could you increase your volume slightly, please?
Okay, maybe I'll just lean a little bit closer to the mic. Does this sound better?
I think
Hello?
so. It's just, I can hear you fine. It was somebody having trouble. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay. Yeah, well, I've got my best microphone on the thing, so I'll just try to lean into it a little bit more. So what I'd like to do is just take you all through an energy healing journey. Again, because the book is Healing Racism Within, a Lightworker's Guide. And as a light worker, as an energy healer, I have found in my own healing journey that even though I have great respect for the work that I've done in terms of healing from psychotherapy and more traditional avenues, but for me, the real exponential healing occurred for me when I got involved in energy healing, mostly Reiki and other forms of energy healing. So I want to explore one of the chapters in here, which is called Working with the Violet Flame. So the violet flame is often talked about in many sort of holistic or new age healing circles. Many people often attribute the violet flame to being connected to Saint Germain. And there's ways to connect with that violet flame energy, whether or not you even believe in Saint Germain. So I prefer to use a process where I connect to the overlighting diva, or you might think of it as that divine intelligence of the violet flame. And the violet flame in energy healing circles is really good for burning out what I think of as negative cords, negative energetics that might exist between you and somebody else. That also might be negative energetics that exist between you and your ancestors. That might be negative energetics that exist even at the cellular level, in your DNA, in your karmic body, in your mental field. So I would like to just talk you through a process in this book of connecting with the overlighting diva of the violet flame. So I'd like to invite you all to just hold the intention that we're, as a group, going to connect with the overlighting diva of the violet flame. And again, that's the overall arching divine intelligence of the violet flame. And you can either say this out loud, or you can whisper it to yourself, or even just say it in your own mind. Just say, I ask the overlighting diva of the violet flame to activate a sphere of the violet flame surrounding me in all directions, 6 feet in diameter. So just make that either verbal request or mental request. Again, speaking to that divine intelligence of the violet flame. And you may feel that start to kick in after a few seconds. I know I'm certainly feeling something here on my end. And then another statement to follow that is, again, you can say this either out loud or whisper it, or even just say it with your mind. I ask the overlighting diva of the violet flame to purge all racist conditioning from my mental body using this sacred light. And again, just ask and allow that to occur. So you may start to feel some energy moving in your field as that happens. And we'll go even deeper with this. And now again, either out loud or whispering or just with your mind, say, I ask the overlighting diva of the violet flame to release all racist conditioning, all racist hatred and bias from my emotional body using this sacred light. Also, any racial trauma existing in my energy field. And again, just allow that to kick in and move through your system. And we're going to just go a little bit deeper in this process. And again, either out loud or in your mind or whispering, you can just say, I ask the overlighting diva of the violet flame to infuse the violet flame into my karmic body and release all karmic conditioning that supports racist behavior, racist thoughts, and racist emotions. And again, just allow that energy to move into your karmic body, letting it do this deeper work. And we're going to continue with this process just a little bit more. And again, either out loud, whispering, or even simply in your own mind, you can say, I ask the overlighting diva of the violet flame to fill each cell of my body with the violet flame to purge all race-based trauma from the cells of my body. And again, just make that invocation in the overlighting diva of the violet flame. We'll begin doing that work. And again, just taking it a little bit deeper. Either out loud or in your own mind, you can say, I ask the overlighting diva of the violet flame to send the violet flame through my ancestral lines to purge and release all racist conditioning, all racist belief systems, all racist bias, both conscious and unconscious, to free me from any negative influence from my ancestors on issues of race. And again, just allow a few minutes for that energy to continue to unfold. And then again, just taking this a little bit deeper, you'd say, I ask the overlighting diva of the violet flame to send the violet flame into any remaining areas where my racist conditioning, racist belief systems, and racist bias, conscious and unconscious, exist in my energy field or physical body, or any dimension and all levels of existence, to free me from any negative racist influences. And again, just allow that energy to continue with you. And we'll just let ourselves sit with that energy as it's moving. And then at this point, you can just give either verbally out loud or just in your mind, give a little thank you to the overlighting diva of the violet flame for this healing you've received. And with all the practices in this book, it's not my belief that you would do this once and that suddenly you're, totally healed of any racist imprints or racist belief systems or racial trauma. These are practices that we would do over time. So in the book, I recommend doing this process with the overlighting diva of the violet flame at least once per week, perhaps more often if you feel a stronger connection to it. But as we engage these practices, we're slowly peeling away these different layers of what I consider to really to be racist toxins that exist in our energetic environment, in the interactions that we have with each other, both consciously and unconsciously. So I think that it's a mistake sometimes that we can often assume that that racism is just something that happens out over there, outside of us. That it's just something that is with those people who might be proudly waving the Confederate flag or something. I think that even those of us who might consider ourselves to be socially enlightened or very progressive to still be carrying these racial toxins in our system, that we carry it through our ancestral memory, that we carry it through our genetic memory, that we carry it in our subconscious. And so the techniques in the book are really about ways to bring those energies into our awareness, become aware of them, and then release them. And then hopefully as we clear our own energetic field more and more, we start to create a more healing space within our own selves, but also then in our workspace, in our family space, in our interactions with people on a day-to-day basis, so that we're not harboring unconscious negativity in ways that can be very damaging, not only to others, but also to ourselves. And pardon me while I just take a quick drink of coconut water here. So I'd like to take you through one other healing experience, and then after that, I'll open it up to some questions. So the book also empowers people to what I call psychic Reiki. So many of you are probably familiar with the term Reiki. So Reiki is a form of energy healing that can be traced back to the Japanese mystic Mikao Usui, who lived in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Reiki came from Japan to the United States shortly before World War II from a Japanese-American woman named Hawaii Takata, and she attuned 22 Reiki masters who then initiated more and more people, and it's pretty much grown exponentially ever since. I would say Reiki is probably the most popular and well-known form of energy healing. And psychic Reiki is a form of Reiki that came to me in 2007 while I was traveling in Asia, and I had a mystical experience where I had a visitation from the spirit of Mikao Usui. And during that visitation, I felt a ball of white light go into the area of my heart chakra, right in front of the center of my chest. And even though it took a number of weeks for me to unpack that experience, I began to realize that that ball of white light was more than just a ball of white light, that it was actually an energetic crystal that I call the Reiki crystal that was now existing in front of the center of my heart chakra and which was part of my energy field. And I began to realize that I could simply talk to that energetic crystal, at first with my voice, and then later I found I could just do it with my mind, and that in speaking to that energetic crystal, it would perform these really beautiful and powerful healings. So psychic Reiki is that sort of subset of the greater whole of Reiki. It's just a much more simple and yet still very powerful way to access the energy. So what I'd like to do right now is just do a psychic Reiki healing on the group, but really focused on the issues of race. So what I'd like to do is just invite you to get comfortable in whatever way you would like to be, whether you want to stay seated in a chair or whether you want to be lying down in the comfort of your own home, in whatever way works for you. And again, I want to reiterate that the book empowers you to this energy so that you can do these kinds of healings for yourself on your own. But for now, I just want to go ahead and perform the healing for you. So again, just get comfortable, seated or lying down, whatever way works for you. And I'm going to begin by just simply asking my Reiki crystal to send Reiki now to your brain and nervous system. So sending Reiki now out to everyone's brain and nervous system who's part of this event, and also to send it through any recordings of this event if anybody watches it later on YouTube or Facebook or anywhere else. And inviting my Reiki crystal now to also send Reiki to all of your organs and organ systems with the intention that of not only relaxing those, but also of clearing out any racial trauma or any negative racial beliefs that may be held at the cellular level in any of those organs and organ systems. So sending it to not just the brain and nervous system, but also to the circulatory system, the respiratory system, sending it to the digestive system, the muscular system, the lymphatic system, sending it to the skeletal system, including all the bones, all the cartilage, all the vertebrae in your spine, all receiving Reiki now. And also inviting this beautiful Reiki energy to send Reiki into your chakras, those energetic wheels talked about in the Vedic healing systems and in yoga, those 7 energy centers. So clearing your chakras of any negative racial trauma, any negative racial beliefs or psychic debris in your chakras that may have been held there from any point in your life, and just releasing that now. And inviting my Reiki crystal also to send Reiki into your meridians, those energetic lines of light that are talked about in Chinese medicine and in acupuncture. So really clearing those pathways of any negative racial trauma, any negative racial belief systems, just doing a deep release on the meridians of anything negative related to issues around race. And from here, also inviting my Reiki crystal to send Reiki into your mental body. So your mental body is that energetic aspect of your being where your mental conditioning is held, where your thought patterns are held, your belief systems are held. So sending Reiki into your mental body with the intent and focus of bringing healing to the mental body on any issues around the issues of race, whether that's a racial trauma that you're holding on to, whether that's an unconscious racial bias that you may be holding on to, and just letting the divine intelligence of Reiki go into your energetic field and do whatever work it needs to do aligned with that specific purpose. Beautiful. And from here, also inviting my Reiki crystal to send the Seiheki mental emotional healing symbol into everybody's emotional body, just to do a deep emotional healing into your emotional body, again on any issues around race, any racial bias, any racial conditioning that may exist in your field, whether you're aware of it or not. Sometimes there's plenty of stuff there that we're not even aware of until we do this kind of work to bring it into our awareness. So just asking that my Reiki crystal do this healing work on you now. And also inviting my Reiki crystal now to create what I call a Reiki pyramid of a Sui fire Reiki around you to just deepen the healing even further, taking you into a deep, deep space of healing around issues of race, racial trauma, racial bias, negative racial belief systems, just to clear that as much as possible. Beautiful. And from here, inviting my Reiki crystal also to create what I call Reiki Lasers, which if you could see them would be like intense beams of Reiki flowing through any 2 points in time and space. So asking my Reiki crystal to create Reiki Lasers between you and all of your ancestors, clearing that ancestral path those ancestral lineage of any negative racial thought forms, any negative racial belief systems, any racial trauma that is ready to be released if it's held there. And again, it's not that I'm sending Reiki to your ancestors. I'm simply clearing that energetic space between you and your ancestors of those energies. And just inviting that Reiki crystal to do that work now. And as I'm doing that now, I can sense the group field, and I'm sensing what almost looks like kind of a brownish sludge kind of lifting out of a lot of people's energetic fields, which is good because we're moving that stuff out. And a thing to know about Reiki is it always works for your highest purpose, always works for the highest good. So this clearing is doing some nice work on the group. And from here, I'm going to invite my Reiki crystal now to bring everyone into a Reiki meditation for deep stillness and inner peace. So just help to bring you into a place of deep stillness and inner peace. And also inviting my Reiki crystal now to bring each cell of your body into a Reiki meditation for self-love. So just what I find is that vibration of self-love really helps push out anything that is not in alignment with love, including any racial traumas, any racial bias, any negative racial beliefs, to help just push that out at the cellular level. Beautiful. We're just going to let that sit in your energetic field for a little bit. And just reminder that all these techniques that I'm doing with you now are also mentioned in the book so that you can do this work on your own, at your own pace, anytime you want or need. And from here, I'm going to take it just a little bit deeper, and I'm going to invite my Reiki crystal to bring you, each of you individually, into a Reiki meditation to show you whatever it is you need to heal around issues of race. And the belief in Reiki is that Reiki, again, has its own divine intelligence. So the Reiki crystal has its own divine intelligence, and it's bringing you into this meditation where that consciousness is going to help awaken those blind spots that we all have, to help us see a little bit more about ourselves, about those areas where we can do some more work. And again, even in my own practice, even though I consider myself probably to be, pretty progressive, pretty socially awakened in many ways, in doing this as a regular practice, there are things that still come up where I go, aha, yeah, there's something I still need to work on. So again, the belief isn't that one healing or one practice is going to release it all. It really is a process, an ongoing process that we engage over and over and over again. And so I'm just going to do a few more pieces of this part of the healing, and then take us into some grounding and integration. So again, I would now like to invite my Reiki crystal to send Reiki into all of your family systems. And I'm not sending Reiki to your family members because I wouldn't do that without their consent. But I'm sending Reiki into that energetic space between you and your family members, into that energetic space of whether it's your house or the bedroom or the car that you all share. So really clearing those spaces between you and your loved ones, you and your family members, bringing some racial healing into those spaces energetically. Beautiful. And from here, also inviting my Reiki crystal to send Reiki into your workspace. And again, not sending it to your coworkers, as I wouldn't do that without their consent, but sending it into the space of your work environment to, again, just clear out and release any negative racial belief systems, any racial vibrations that are harmful to you or others in any way, shape, or form. Anything there that's not of the highest good. And from this point, I'm now going to shift the healing more towards grounding and integration, because I love energy healing, but I also know that sometimes it can leave some people feeling like they're floating a little bit outside their bodies. So I'm going to shift this to help bring us back into our bodies and back into a place of normal waking consciousness. So I'm inviting my Reiki crystal now to manifest a Reiki cord running from your tailbone and your root chakra all the way down to the center of the earth for grounding. And also inviting my Reiki crystal to bring everybody on this Zoom call, also those of you who watch this in future time through YouTube or other avenues, bringing you into a place of peaceful and gentle integration. So just inviting my Reiki crystal to do that. And as that energy of integration starts to flow towards you, some of you might feel as though the vibration of the energy is a little more heavy or a little more dense. And that's because it is. It's reminding you that even though you are a spiritual being, you do exist in a body, you do exist in this world of form. And so the energy is just kind of bringing us back into our bodies, back into this earthly realm, back into this time and space. And that energy is going to continue with each of you at your own pace. Some of you might need a little bit more than others, depending on how deep the healing went with you. So I'm just going to allow it to continue to unfold. Some of you may start to feel that you're already now coming back into your bodies. You're becoming aware of your toes and your fingertips. You're becoming aware of the feeling of the chair or the bed supporting you. You might even be paying attention to any sounds around you, not just my voice, but any sounds that might be happening inside or outside the room that you're in. And coming back into your body, back into the room, back into this time and space. And so that, again, is just a sample of some of the work of this book. So the book empowers you. There's an empowerment exercise where you would receive your own Reiki crystal so that you could then learn how to do psychic Reiki treatments on yourself and focus them specifically on issues around healing racial trauma, racial bias, racial belief systems, and also bringing that healing out into the world. One thing that I talk about in one of the later chapters of this book is the Maharishi effect. So the Maharishi effect, if you've never heard of it before, is drawn back to some experiments that happened at the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi's University in Iowa. And they did some practices. This was a while back. I think it was probably more than 10 or 15 years ago, where they were practicing doing meditations and visualizing the crime rate in Washington, D.C. go down. Even though they were in Iowa, they were imagining and visualizing and meditating on the crime rate in Washington, D.C. going down. And then they matched that with statistics on when they were doing the meditations, and they saw that there was actually a dip in the crime rate when they would be doing those meditations. And so what that tells us is that small groups can still have an impact on the greater whole when doing, whether it's meditations or energy healing. So my belief is that as all of us do this work from the book, whether it's the inner work of Tonglen meditations or using psychic Reiki or using the overlighting diva of the violet flame, as we do more and more of this work and begin to send that healing out into the world at large, that there is an actual palpable effect that it can bring upon in terms of the greater good of our society as a whole. And again, I came from a background that was quite horrendous, and I don't say that for any form of self-pity. I'm actually a very happy individual. I have a beautiful son and an amazing wife and a beautiful job. And at Omega Institute, where I work, people often know me and identify me on campus for my loud, resounding laugh. And you wouldn't think of that as something that would have evolved if you just knew about my childhood. And so in my own journey, what I've really come to know and realize is that these practices do work in terms of being able to transform deep, deep trauma. And there's no reason that they cannot also work then to help translate the trauma of race individually and collectively, to really open ourselves into a greater stage of human evolution where we really do see that divine light existing not only within ourselves but also in each other. So I want to go ahead and open it up now. If there are any questions anybody has, any comments anybody has about the healing experience, or any questions related to the book, just would like to open it up to that. So I also want to be very mindful that often when doing this kind of work, with the Reiki work in particular, that it can often take many people into a very nonverbal space. So if it takes a few moments for those comments or questions to emerge, please know I totally understand. It's very common with this work that people go into a very nonverbal space, and that's just often to be expected with this. So just opening it up, if anybody has any questions, any comments, anything they would like to share about their experience, or anything they would like to ask about the specific healings tonight, or about the book in general. And while we're waiting for those comments and questions to emerge, I also want to just let people know, I'm going to put my email into the chat. So I'm going to put this out to everybody. And what I would like to say is I really want to support both Oblong Books for promoting this event and hosting this event. And I also want to support my publisher at Monkfish Publishing to really inspire people to want to buy the book beyond just the power of the book. So I've put my email into the chat. And what I invite you to do is if you buy a copy of the book from Oblong Books, then I will give you a free online course that is based on the book called Healing Racism Within. And it's a 21-day journey using a lot of the chapters that are in the book, but also even adding more with some techniques that are not mentioned in the book. So for example, in the 21-day online course, I do some deep magical awakening practices, which I didn't put in the book intentionally because I felt it would have kind of steered the book in a slightly different direction. And yet magical awakening is a very powerful form of energy healing. So in the online course, you get to experience some of those deep magical awakening energy healings around issues of race. And again, it's a 21-day version connected to the book. But if you buy the book, you get that online course for free. Just email me and send me a photograph of the receipt of your purchase, and I'd be happy to gift that to you. So please feel free to follow up with me on that. And I've been getting some very positive responses on that online course too. And also let your friends know that if you buy the book from Oblong Books, that I'm happy to gift you that online course just as a little extra bonus. So again, just want to open it up. If there's any comments or questions, I'm happy also to continue doing more work from the book and reading from the book, but I want to make sure that if any of you have any questions or anything you want to share, that you feel that I've answered them in our time that we have together. So if there are any comments or questions, please feel free to let me know. And if not, then I can certainly share some more practices from the book. So what I think I would like to do then is I'm going to do a little bit more. Oh, wait. Vanessa asks, how did I come to choose racism as the subject of my book? And Vanessa asks. So for me, basically, I feel like it's not so much that I chose it as it chose me. And what I mean by that is, I'm going to wax on a little bit with some stories here. So first of all, for many years, I've worked at Omega Institute for over 20 years, and often I'm also married to a woman of color, and so I've seen the pain that she's endured on her journey in this life, and we've had so many deep conversations around that. And I've often wondered, the power of these transformational healing exercises, not just the ones that are in this book, but of the things that I've seen at places like Omega Institute. Where there's breath work, there's meditation, there's yoga, there's energy healing, shamanic work. And I I've transformed myself in such a radical way using a variety of those techniques. I know that these techniques work. And I also know that racism is not just an idea. It's not just something that exists in the laws of our society. It's not just something that exists in statues or in images of the Confederate flag. It's something that exists in our minds, in our cells, in our body, in our energetic body, in our karmic body. And so in this conversation around issues of race that I've seen going on now for a number of years, particularly heightened in the last few years, one thing that I feel is very important is to give people tools to actually address that. How does that exist in your own body? How do you move out that unconscious racist bias that might be lingering at the base of your skull that you're not even aware of? So how do you actually move that out? And I had actually written an article shortly after the murder of Eric Garner. You remember him with the I Can't Breathe, right? This was several years ago. And I remember writing an article about my wish that these more holistic practices would be used more to address issues of race. And it was actually accepted to be published in a magazine. I'm not going to name the magazine that it was accepted to be published in. It was accepted to be published in a magazine, and I was very excited about it. And then suddenly the magazine backed off. Like they felt it was too charged, or I was never quite sure what the reason was, but they reneged on their commitment to publish this article. And the interesting thing, and again, I told you it's going to be a long answer to your question, but literally within a week after that, I was in a workshop at Omega Institute with the shaman Alberto Villaldo. And in that workshop, he had us do what was called not a soul retrieval, but a destiny retrieval, where we each did a journey to retrieve something that was meant to be for another person's destiny in the room. And the work that I did was with a woman who I'd never met. She didn't know me. She didn't know anything about me. But when she did the destiny retrieval for me, she came back and she said that I was supposed to write something in this life on the conversation around race, and that what I would write would actually be very important to that conversation, and that it was part of my destiny to do so. And I remember at that time literally having, the goosebumps on my arms standing up as she was telling me this. And at that time, I thought what she was saying was just related to this one article that I had sent to this publisher, who had then rejected the article. But I came to really meditate with it more and more. And as the pain of what we experienced during the Trump years, and again, my wife as a woman of color experiencing the pain that she felt just in the rhetoric of the Trump years, and that kind of collective pain that existed and that still exists in our society, I just felt that as one who came from a very racist background and who witnessed a race-based murder and who has used this work on myself to really transform that darkness into a place of light, that the world needs this work, and that people need this work now more than ever. And so that's really why the book came out and why I wrote it. And again, I want to give a lot of gratitude to Paul Cohen at Monkfish for the courage to publish this book, because I know even though we think of this topic as being very timely, it's still something that I think a lot of people have a hard time wanting to take a look at them. How does racism exist in ourselves? And the book is really asking us to do that, and also at the same time providing us tools to start to do that work. So a long-winded answer to your question, but thank you. And Vanessa, thank you for your comment where you say, I don't consider myself racist, but I felt a lot of stuff come out of me. Thank you very much for the healing. I actually really love that comment. And I really think an important thing that I really try to push with this book is that I think too often we just think of the conversation as being somebody's either racist or they're not. And I really don't believe that it's a binary thing. I believe that we exist in an energetic field where there's a lot of racial pollution, if you want to think of that. So if I was to use the analogy of drinking water, right? When you drink water these days, it's very likely that water is polluted. Sometimes it's polluted with plastics, sometimes it's polluted with pharmaceuticals, and even if you're a very well-meaning, wanting to be as healthy as you can person, when you're drinking a glass of water, most likely it's got some substance in there that isn't that pure, right? So that's just with water. But I consider our society to be that same way around issues of race. So even if we're very progressive and we consider ourselves not to be racist and really to be, doing the best we can on that issue, I still believe there are still things that are being held in our energy system, still held in our consciousness, still held in our ancestral lineage that do have negative racial implications and that can still express themselves through our behavior, even though we may not be intending it to do that, right? So I really appreciate your question, Vanessa. And again, for me, I believe very strongly that we exist in a society where there's a toxin of racism that has just permeated that society in such a way that we literally pick it up through the media, we pick it up through our interactions with friends, we pick it up through our ancestral lineage, and it's just work that we all have to commit to do. And so again, I really appreciate your question and also appreciate your honesty that you said you felt a lot of things move and shift during the healing. Don writes, I've spent most of my life thinking I am not racist either, but I agree there is stuff there. That and anger about racism also has come up for me recently. Thank you, Don. And again, I'll just reiterate what I just said. For me, I don't think of the question as being a binary one of like, oh, we're racist or not racist. Now, I do think, yes, there are people in our society who are blatantly, racist. They're, carrying the tiki torches at marches in South Carolina, etc. And certainly there is that segment of the population. But I would say even those of us who may not consider ourselves to be racist, I think we are still breathing and eating and drinking in a society where there are racist toxins in everything, in the relationships that we had at school growing up, in what we see on the media. And I would say, invitation for you is that one chapter in my book, there's a practice, I think I mentioned it earlier, called Multicultural Gratitude, where you simply take time to express gratitude to cultures other than your own and races other than your own, and start to make that a daily practice. And what I noticed when I first started doing that practice, and I found it very, very interesting, is that I would get very tired. I would physically get tired when I would do that practice. And the more I thought about it, what I've really come to believe is that when you think of the morphogenetic field, right, that energetic field of over 500 years of racial oppression, right, that morphogenetic field has been like a tsunami that's been rolling for 500 years. So even those of us who, again, may consider ourselves to be more socially progressive or socially awakened, and we don't see ourselves as being racist, even in that, there's still these energetic blinders that we might have on that we're not even aware of. And I realized that when I was doing that work of multicultural gratitude, that the reason I was getting tired was that I was literally kind of psychically pushing up against this groove in my own consciousness, which was telling me not to actively show appreciation to other races. That, often when we think about gratitude, we think about just being grateful for our day, or grateful for having our health, or grateful for a good job. And we don't usually stretch that fabric in our consciousness to then extend that for being, grateful for the migrant farm worker who picked the grapes or the strawberries or whatever it is that we're eating, or being grateful for the amazing courage and inspiration of somebody like Muhammad Ali, who I looked up to as a child and who I found to be a very courageous figure in my own childhood, or to be grateful for the beautiful Indian saris that come from the culture that my wife is from, and the beauty and gorgeous expression of that fabric art. and to literally make a practice of that. And I found that I was getting physically tired doing that. And so again, I realized that there's a morphogenetic field that has literally been going mostly unchallenged for the last 500 years. And we all live in that. So what the book does is it gives us tools to begin to free ourselves from that. So Vanessa asks, should we repeat healings like this in your book, or is everything that we can be cleared after one healing? Very, very good question. And I would say quite emphatically, yes, please continue doing these healings. It's like peeling away the layers of an onion. One healing is not going to do it all. It might do a lot, but it's not going to do it all. And I've been doing this work for a long time, and I still find things that I need to be releasing. I still find things in my own field that I need to bring healing to. So it's an ongoing process. And again, part of that is that our culture at large, again, if you use the analogy of water, our water everywhere is pretty much polluted. And I would say our psyches are also somewhat polluted by toxins of racism that we're often totally unaware of and totally oblivious to. So if you can just make a practice of this the same way you would maybe a meditation practice or a yoga practice or whatever your personal spiritual practice might be, or whatever your healing practice might be. For those of us who are Reiki practitioners, I do energy healing on myself every day. If you're somebody who meditates every day, you realize that just meditating once doesn't do it. It's really a practice. And the same with energy healing or shamanic work or yoga, etc. And so with all these examples in the book, they're practices. And what I encourage you to do is find the ones in the book that work for you. It could be that you really resonate towards some and not so much towards others. And that's why I wanted to put a variety of possibilities in the book. And you find the ones that work for you, and then you make them a regular practice, whether you're doing it every day or at least once a week, to just start to peel away that layer, one onion peel at a time, so to speak, so that we're clearing ourselves more and more and finding that energetic stuff that's in our system and releasing it. And I not that I want this to be a weight loss program, but I will just share one story, and that is that when the book went into its final galley copies, and so for me at that point, that meant it was going out into the world and that people were really going to see everything I was talking about. They were also going to see my story. From that point to now, I've lost about 40 pounds, and in a good way, because I was overweight. I'm still a little overweight, but I was definitely overweight and I needed to lose some weight. And I really believe that it is the process of this book and putting this book out into the world that has allowed me to release that baggage that I've been holding on to. It's allowed me to release that extra energetic weight that I've been carrying, whether it's my shame, racial bias, whatever you want to think of it, that it's allowed me to release that in a way that allowed me then to let go of that extra 40 pounds. So for me, I believe that these techniques are not only helping society at large, but they also make us more healthy as individuals. We can start to let go of that racial belief system that may show up as extra weight, or it may show up as some other issue in our physical body. It will only have positive impacts the more that we release this kind of stuff from ourselves. So thank you for that question. Are there other questions that anybody has? Susan Smith writes, I find the term white cowardice to be so on point and wonder how I came to it. Well, thank you, Susan. I really appreciate that question. And for me, it is intended to be a deeper look. I've never felt comfortable with the term white privilege. And it's not that I'm against that term. I actually believe that the idea or the concept behind that term is pretty on point. But I've always felt the word privilege didn't quite take it far enough. The word privilege made it sound like kind of some intellectual process of like, oh, I'm privileged and I'll talk about this in some, intellectualized format. But when you really look at the behavior of our culture for the past 500 years of literally stealing people from one part of the planet and bringing them over here to perform free labor, and also at the same time performing massive genocide on the indigenous people of this land, that there's a lot of cowardice in that, right? And so it's not just about privilege in the terms of, oh, by being white I have more opportunities than others. Like, no, there's an energetic cowardice underneath all of this, and that we really need to face it boldly and confront it boldly in ourselves, and also in our work environments, in our families, in our society as a whole. And so yeah, it really, that term was really born out of my own discomfort with the term white privilege, and the feeling that the privilege just didn't really go deep enough for me, and I always felt a little uncomfortable about that term, so felt that white cowardice was really more appropriate. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments anybody has?
Well,
Thank you. Well, I just want to just remind people just before we finish that, again, if you email me, if you buy the book from Oblong, and if you email me your receipt of purchase, that I will also gift you the 21-day online course that I created as a complement to the book. So please support Oblong and Monkfish, and enjoy the extra online course.
well, Brett, thank you so much. That was just wonderful and very enlightening, and I appreciate your support of Oblong Books. We very much appreciate that. I think this book, white people in general, are in the process of searching for ways to address these issues, and I think your book goes a long way to help a lot of people do that. So for that, we thank you very, very much. And thank you for the generosity of performing the healings that you did this evening for us all. They were greatly received, wonderfully received, and we thank you. And thank you for being so generous as to offer the course as well, along with the book. That is a very generous thing to do, and we appreciate that. So without further ado, I'd like to thank all of you for spending your evenings with us. Thank you to Monkfish Books. Thank you, Brett, for spending your time and energy with us this evening. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and I wish you all well. And we hope to see you all soon. Thank you. Good night.